need to do to take a chair that was very plain, you'll see in a minute, and jazz it up and give it a whole new life. This was a Hitchcock table. We found these chairs that were from something totally else, and you know what? We made it work with this table. I think it looks super cute, and we're going to show you what we did to achieve this look from boring oak and ugly upholstery to, I think, something that looks super fabulous. You want to make sure you're wearing proper gloves, goggles, masks in appropriate times when you're working with chemicals, and if you want to keep your fingers nice and clean, even when you're painting. All right, make sure you're taking the proper steps, even if I wasn't. This is how I do it. I'm certainly not a pro at upholstering, so I've done many on my own, and they all hold up. Everyone has different ways. This is how I do it, and I hope you learned something. If you did, make sure you share, because we'd love that. Let everyone know. All right, tell your friends if they're interested in learning, and you can post your comments, any questions down below. All right, I hope you enjoy it. Hi, we're outside the store. We're cleaning and prepping here, and I know you don't want to hear those words, especially oh, I'm using a mineral paint, I'm using a chalk paint, I'm using a clay paint. I don't have to prep. All I have to do is clean it. Well, you have to clean it, yeah. And I do suggest you prep it. I've had companies that claim it and doesn't seem to stick that, adhere that well. I've had companies say you don't need to seal it and think you needed to seal it. So certain things just work well, and why mess with a good thing? Are the mineral paints still easy to use? Oh my God, yes, still use them. But, sorry, a simple clean and prep will save you the heartache of finding out down the road that you should have, even though they claimed you didn't need to, right? So here we go. I have these lovely, lovely chairs. There's another one inside, but we got plenty to work from here, right? So what we're doing is we had taken the seats off. You didn't need to watch me do that. They were so lovely, aren't they? And all you're gonna do to take them off, sorry for the wind, is you're gonna find the screws that were attaching the frame to the wood of your upholstery, okay? Your upholstery is wrapped around a piece of wood. In this case, it's normally in these little holes right here underneath the braces. However, someone must have stripped them because it was a previous lovely fabric, and they had drilled in some pocket holes and put in some Allen head screws. So determine, first of all, which screws are going into the wood of your seat, not to the braces or any other parts of your frame. You just want the ones that are going to the wood of your seat, and find out if it's a Phillips head, which has that cross design, the flat head, which is just a skinny flat, or a Allen head, which these are. They have a little square on the end, and you would need to find an Allen head set, an Allen wrench set, and that can be found at any local Ace or whatever, big box store, or any local hardware store would work. And so once you have them all unscrewed, your seat will pop off, all right? And now you have your frame. Now you might want to look it over, make sure you don't have any fixes to do. These have been fixed, and I'm not going to refix them. And if you find you have fixes, go on YouTube it. I'm doing a tutorial on paint, not on furniture repair. But it's usually pretty easy to figure out with a little wood filler, maybe a little glue, at the joints here, and then get like a belt, a strap. They make clamps and clamping straps for gluing. So whatever works for you, whatever does the job, just do it. Again, if you need something more involved, look up on how you can do this yourself, okay? So now we're going to start the lovely job of prepping. And, oops, move away. I have a piece of sandpaper. Normally, this is actually very gritty. It's a low number, means that it's very gritty. Sorry about that as well. because we are on Main Street in Hyannis, Cape Cod. Just putting it out there. Normally I would not prep with this. I'm painting this over and it's going to get sanded and this isn't going to show as long as I don't put a lot of effort into this. But since I don't want to put a lot of effort into this, literally you're just going to scrape the surface a little bit. Normally you're going to do this with like a 80 grit, 100 grit paper. It means it's got a little less of this kind of gritty things. It's a little smoother. All right? That is a technical term, gritty thing. All right? And you just want to, anything that's going to get paint, you want to give it a quick sand. All right? Easy peasy. You get the idea. They make this hand one I found on Amazon. It's a glove that the sandpaper sticks to. Super cool. But these are flat posts, turns. And so that isn't going to really save me a lot of time. So I'm not using that today. You get the idea. Give it a quick tack on all the surface that's going to take paint. And then you want to clean it. I like to do the sanding first and then clean after if I can. If you have a piece that it's very old and it's got that dark brown grunge, it's dark brown and you can't hardly even make out the wood grain anymore, you're probably better off cleaning first and then sanding and then dusting it off after. If it's not too bad of a piece like mine, I like to sand it first because there's not a lot of wax and polish on here. It's mainly, a little bit, and what I just did isn't going to harm my sandpaper and it's not going to make work any more difficult for me. So now what can I do? You can find at the local hardware store mineral spirits. All right, you can wipe it down with mineral spirits, although you're going to want to make sure you're wearing gloves for mineral spirits, denatured alcohol, TSP, whatever you're using. Although I don't like to use TSP or dish soap. I like, if you think it's possible that it was oil-based varnish on here, you can wipe it down with mineral spirits. And you just wipe it down. If it's really grungy, you can try a little like a scrubby from your kitchen sink, the nylon ones, whatever. Although don't go using it in your kitchen sink anymore. And then maybe once or twice with the mineral spirits. And then you're gonna go and wipe it down with denatured alcohol. Once or twice. Again, if you need to get more of that gunge off, denatured alcohol. A lot of times all I use, if I don't have my furniture clean and prep handy, I'm using denatured alcohol because that's not going to leave any oils. It's just an alcohol and it dries out, it fades away. Mineral spirits will leave an oil film, so that's why you have to go over after with the denatured alcohol. But you're going to want to wait to do the denatured alcohol well after the mineral spirits have well dried, okay? And don't store them together. And if you have to, if you can, get a fire-safe box, a storage box for all your chemicals. That's the best way to store them and away from the kids and locked up and all that. Wear gloves, well-ventilated area and all that. However, this is what we sell on our online store. It's a furniture clean and prep. And all you do is spray it on. Okay? It's not as handy as your mineral spirits or denatured alcohol because all your Ace Hardwares and big box stores and all that, they all have it. So this I have and I ship it out, just saying. You're just going to spray it on. Spray, spray, spray. Give it a good coating. If you're going to stain your piece after and it's dripping the grunge and the gunk and all that off, you're going to want to take like a chip brush and move it evenly around your piece. I'm going to get my little rags here. A lot of times I'll take like a paper towel and it gets soaked with this and then just kind of move it around with it so it doesn't drip. But this isn't going to make a difference for our chairs because they weren't that gunky. You're not going to see the drips. But what you are going to want to do is if you're doing this on a surface that you don't want stained after, put a tarp down, because all this is dripping, gravity is pulling it down, and it's puddling down on the ground. We have these bricks, and this is what we have on these chairs, because I'm going to show. It's going to dry up nicely. It's not an oil. It's not going to stain the bricks. But it's super cold. It does not smell awful. So like if you really want to do this in your garage or in your basement, you know, it's a rainy day and you still want to prep, this is the way to go. I'm telling you. And if you're a business owner, or even if you just have like one of those chalkboards and you have that ghosting happening, tip, spray this on, let it sit for a few minutes. Again, if you have to, like catch it with a rag so it doesn't drip down too much, and then get one of those Mr. Clean erasers or whatever, or an off-brand, doesn't matter, and scrub it with that. Oh my God. Big tip there, big tip. So anyways, so I let this sit for like 15-20 minutes, and I'm going to take a wet rag and I'm going to wash that all off, and I'm going to let that dry really well. This also, I think, somewhat deglosses, so again, you don't have to worry if it's not a really shiny surface. This is usually well enough. All right, just clean and go. And we'll catch you at the next phase. Bye. Hi, we're at the fun part. Okay, let's get rolling. We're working, for the purpose of demonstration, we're working with chalk paint, mineral paint, clay paint. It could be any one of those. We happen to be working with Miss Lillian's no wax chalk paint. All right. Actually, that's upside down. There we go. She has hers so that you can store it, and it's actually a pretty good idea so that the seal always stays wet. It's nicely pigmented. It's a little bit thinner than a lot of the chalk paints that we've used. I've already done the chairs, kind of practicing the video, but I just want to show you, like, as far as a mineral clay paint, chalk paint goes, it's a little bit on the runnier side. Typically they're very thick, and so water will certainly be your friend, and having a damp brush will be very beneficial to you. All right, I'm pouring into another container because I don't want this to dry out. They dry so fast, and I don't want to get debris and all that in here. A lot of times, you know, as you're working with the jars, you can get like the dried paint, and as you're opening and closing, it's falling into your paint, and you're picking it out of your paint later. So have some old Tupperware or jar or whatever around to have your paint in. You're going to want to have a little pail of water or a little bowl of water or something to add some dampness to your brush if it gets too dry, especially if you're working outdoors. You're going to want to have the right brush. I like to use this one. You can get it at any art craft store and use your coupon. I do it. And it's really handy for chairs and smaller pieces. This is something I probably wouldn't use for a chair. It's a Klingon. It's really full of bristles, very thin, feathery edges on that. That's what's very beneficial when working with these clay chalk mineral paints, and probably the latex too. This is what I'm using today. It's what I got from my sample kit with Jolie Paints. It's a round bristle brush. It's a synthetic, and it has that feathery edge, so it's super handy. You can use a hog's hair, there's no rules here. It's water-based paint. It's gonna come off. It's not gonna harm anything. It just, I find that I like how they can get the bristles really fine. So we're gonna get rolling here, and I just want to show you, we have these chairs, and I'm gonna flip it upside down. Anytime you can, if it's a lightweight bureau or an end table or whatever, you know what, it's just handy to start from upside down, just, just saying. That way, it's hard to, when you're, especially if you're at home and you're working on the floor, you're like, it ain't gonna be pretty, okay? I'm spoiled. I have this cute little work table. It used to be a bar stool that swiveled. We took the seat off and we put the plywood on, and bada bing, bada boom, I got a nice little work table. So I'm just gonna go for it. I'm dipping my paint in here. My brush was damp, and you're gonna find if you never worked with the clay paints, and I don't normally start at the bottom of a piece, but just because we have just so for the purpose of demonstration I can have more intersections, because that's what's hard about chairs, is there's so many joints and intersections and things like that. You know, getting a nice, smooth, you know, professionally finished look can be difficult because of that. So what I do is I just get it on. Just get it on there. Don't worry, oh my God, look at that, and then the light goes that, what am I gonna do? Oh, you know what, just get the paint to cover. It dries fast, but not that fast. And if it's drying that fast, it must mean you're outdoors in the hot of summer. Don't do that, unless it's a really quick piece, but not, you don't wanna do it with chairs. All right, so get it on, and then go back and work with the grain. And again, you might have to just kind of keep touching it until you get a good mojo, right? So it's easy peasy. Takes a little bit of patience. You don't want to have the paint go on so thick that it's dripping all over the place. You're not going to have 100% coverage on first coat. Although I will say I did have one paint, and I've tried probably 14 brands, and if you have any questions on brands, just private message me through any of our social media or anything, or email us so you can find that information. I believe on YouTube, or you know, go to our site, contact form, and I will answer any questions on brands. But I don't want to do it publicly. They're all great. For the most part, they're all great. But of all the brands that I've tried, they all have their pluses and their minuses. Work with your stockist, your retailer, to find, you know, all the ins and outs. All right. Can we see? I'm going to press down a hair, because I did the chair before, and I found out a lot of the times I hadn't pulled the camera out far enough, and so we were missing a lot of it. So where was I going? I was talking about brands, and then I got off subject again, off track. And this is how I roll. I'm not sure how to think of it, but all the brands will work differently as far as coverage. Oh, that's what I was going to say, is the one brand did work really nicely on one coat, but for the most part, any paint isn't going to cover on one coat. But the nice thing is if you are working with the chalk, mineral, clay, whatever, those natural type paints, and they're going to be nice and thick, and for some better than others are going to have way better coverage than your latex paints. And I am not a snob, but if you've never worked with a paint line that is not one of the made by one of the major big brands, you'll find they work much better. They might be something that you can't get everywhere. Maybe they're a little more expensive than the ones you get at the other stores, but trust me, what you're getting at the other stores, you're still paying more for it than the latex paint, and it's made by chemists that don't get this whole process. If you ask me, they're making a matte paint to look like a chalk paint. They're just making a matte latex, in my honest opinion. And I have 2 paint chemists in my family, and I get laughed at. So, and I've dared them to try the products, so we'll see next time I get together with the family if they ever did. But there's just this apparent kind of like, you know, in the business, I guess, the latex people just don't get it. And that being said, a lot of times the latex people just don't get it. I was leery going to this whole industry I used to do They're basically latex base or acrylic base finishes. I did it to walls and all that. And I was leery about this, you know, clay paint. But supposedly, right, you could paint in your living room and get a nice finish. And so I started playing with it. And you know what? I actually started making my own. And I'm sure you've looked into that. Trust me, this is so much easier. You're gonna pay a little bit more, yeah, but you're gonna get a heck of a lot better coverage, because what I found, of all the recipes and all my own tweaking, you're still working with the latex, and so the coverage just is not there. So you know, long run, you're saving yourself time, you're saving yourself product, because you're not having to go over it as much. So I'm just coating this, all the undersides that I can. Again, I'm working it, getting it on there, and then going with the grain. And then you want to make sure you're constantly going back over your other areas, around the corners that you can't see, under the edges. Just give it a quick wipe down after, because trust me, when you turn the chair over, you're going to find pools where it pooled or puddled, and you didn't expect that. Okay? And it's not written in stone that you have to go with the grain. No big deal. And another nice thing, try not to flick your brush, not really like that. It's hard to get a good example of this because this brush doesn't really want to do that. But you know, you have to be mindful of what's around you. And so the less flicking, where it's like spreads out like a fan and spits out all that paint everywhere, the better. Because Lord knows any dog, kid, or piece of furniture around will get the flicker of paint. So, all right, so we're almost there. I'm not going to paint the whole chair for you, although you can see this is going really super fast. I'm trying to remember all the different points that I want to talk about. All right, these chairs are going with a Hitchcock table. I think I said it, but we wanted, I got this paint as samples from Miss Lillian's, and I fell in love with the color combo. Now, not for nothing, I don't know if I trust the whole no wax chalk paint. I find that all the manufacturers, you really must try them to see if they live up to their claims. And to be fair, you should let them fully cure. A cured paint, I mean, it takes longer for oil, but even a water-based paint, even these chalk paints, they're dry in an hour. Dry to the touch, but they are not cured. They won't be cured until a good, I'll say a month, give or take. Okay, depending on the paint brand. I know. Will I move furniture beforehand? Absolutely. You know, the longer it goes, the more durable it's holding up. But it's not something you want to be sitting heavy lamps on or anything after. And I'm just going to try and get some of these spindles on the underside. Because I find when I turn the chair over, it's hard to get the underside. It's hard enough to get around the spindles as it is. See how I'm doing? I'm just dabbing it in there. And then I'm going to kind of go with the grain. Okay? This isn't earth science. And I noticed my husband has a tough time with the paint. He's like, boy, you're not being a nice finish painter. You know, that's the nice thing about these paints, is you don't have to go to the lengths that you do with the latex paint, because the latex, if I was going back over it like this part now, I'd be pulling, even if it's a matte paint, I think. Certainly once you get into any sheen, you're gonna see that you went over it. The sheen changes, and that's the nice thing. The more matte it is, the more you can manipulate it without it showing. All right, so you get the idea. And I want to get the other side here. And then we're going to flip it over and we're going to see the spots on the other side of things. And this is just first coat. Okay? Don't worry about it. If you didn't get everything, okay, we just need to get some paint down. Give it so it can kind of settle, okay? All right, so that's how this is going to work, and you're going to do the same thing with the spindles, only on the right side up, okay? You're going to go on the front, you're going to go on the back, you're going to constantly check for the pulling, both sides, as you're doing this. All right, so you can't see, moving up in the world, okay? Add some more paint. See how much nice that covers? That's a second coat now on here because it's already kind of dried. Okay, and I'm just gonna work it around. Work this. This is a very difficult area, especially if you have the seat here. What I'll do is I'll wait to do the bottom portion of all my spindles. When I have a wooden seat, I do the bottom portion when I'm doing the seat. So you don't want to have it like be a heavy pool of paint down there because you're going to be doing that last. Okay? Just reach here, pull the paint. So yeah, so now let's say we did all our spindles. Okay? And now we're going to do the seat. So what I'll do is I would start getting around the spindles and moving around the back part of the seat, which does extend more than this is. Okay? And then work the paint up the post and work the paint behind the post. And then, you know, again, work the paint up the post, and then you start pulling the paint across the seat. Pull the paint across, you know, down the seat, I should say. All right. In the case of another chair that we have, again, I'm going to do this intersection. I'm getting the paint in there, working it with the grain, working it with the grain. All right. Enough of that. I'm going to wrap my brush because I'm not going to be moving for long. I'm going to come back to this. I'm just going to wrap it in my damp rag, and I want to show you what I'm talking about the seat here. All right, we have this one. All right, it's a very heavy chair. So I did all the spindles coming down, and then, let's see, this has no paint on it, so, and I just worked the paint, and then work the paint, okay? And then, when we got all the paint covered in the back and up the spindles, and you know, go up the side best you can, it's not gonna be 100%, then you can start working the paint down your seat. Work the paint down here. You've already worked the paint all the way down your spindles, and go and just pull the paint down the seat. You know, you might have to go back and fine tune, but again, any, you know, big blotches of paint that you missed, we're going to take care of later. All right? So that's that. I can explain that, and let me show you one chair with one coat. All right. This chair is one coat. Oh my God, the miracle of chalk paint, right? It covers so easy. This is pretty much what you can expect on a one coat chalk paint. And you'll see a big difference when we do the second coat. But that is for another day. I'm a little cockeyed, all right? Hi. So we're putting on a second coat. As you can see, we're getting a lot nicer coverage. And it's gonna need a third coat, but that's okay. I'd rather do the thinner coats than have big channels of the brushed paint coming. I see like a nick here. A chunk of something got stuck there. Because it's wet, it's activating the first layer. That's what mineral paint does. If you overwork it, you're going to start, once it's wet, it's going to be easy to chip off, nick off, pull off if you're over brushing it. So any of the mineral paints, they're very water activated usually. Some more than others. Always it's going to be that response. Some more than others. All right. So you know what the idea is here. We're going to keep going. And it's going to take at least a third coat. And if you're doing your project along, I want you to come back when everything looks like it's all the color and none of the wood coming through. Unless you want the wood to come through. There's a lot of times when I'm painting certain pieces of furniture, if I'm going to do the really shabby chic look, like I would leave this kind of streaky so that I don't have to sand it all off after, especially on bureaus. If it's already kind of giving you a shabby chic look, just don't keep painting that area. You want it to be very natural, so don't plan on where those spots are going to be. But when it happens in the right spot, and you like that it's distressed looking there, then you can leave it. But this is going to be a more prim and proper finish set. A little bit of distress, but not like I want to leave this all streaky. So I'm going to keep painting, and I'm going to clean my brush. Again, water loves water, that fourth coat. But we're ready to go to the next stage. And so if you're following along, you want to have a little bucket of water, or be close to the sink. Either way works. Some sort of a rag will do, damp rag. That's actually one I used to wipe up another table. This is a cleaner one. It's a well-loved one. It doesn't matter. Save the old rag, save your old t-shirts. And then I have all these different things that we can sand with. And I save the ones that get worn out because I find, depending on the paints, some of them don't really need any grit to them. Some need, do better with a little more grit. Sometimes all you need is a scrubby. And sometimes all you really need is just to lightly touch it. I find most of these chalk or mineral paints, if you just do the slightest bit of sanding on them, it makes them like buttery soft. I don't know else how to describe it, but you will feel the difference, trust me. And you don't have to go to town on this. You can do it as much or as little as you like. We did it nice and thin, so I'm going to try and spin this so that I'm not spilling my water. I don't know if you can tell. It's really nice finish, and it's, I have to say, putting it on, my husband did a coat on these as well, and he was like, wow, it's nice and buttery soft. I love the paint. But this is going to sand really easy. So I'm actually thinking I'm going to try the scrubby pad. Alright, so just going to dampen it. I don't want it really wet because it'll really go to town. The more wet when you're working with mineral, especially the chalk paints, the more it'll more like a peel off rather than a distress off. And then I'm going to have something with a really fine grit, maybe like this one. It's a sand, I don't even know, there's not even a number left on it, but it's barely got any grit to it. Alright, and we're going to have a rag handy, and we're just going to see what happens. I haven't done one. We're doing it on the fly here. And again, this is a new paint line for me, so it's not bad. It's holding up. Okay. Maybe this is, I just want a little distress. Sometimes you have to wipe back to see where you're at with it. Like that. Just a little bit. And you want to have it more distressed in the areas if you're going to do it all, if you want to do it, especially in the areas that would take the most wear. So I like to do it like up in here because people are touching your chair, right? When they're moving it over the years, it would wear out here. So we're going to just kind of like this. And again, this is really like no grit on the sandpaper. So if I wanted it to go faster, I could step up on the grit. Let's try this one. Yeah, like that. Just a little bit of wear and tear. Okay. This one I didn't even wet, but the surface was already sort of wet, so see, we're getting a little bit of the distress. It's really fun, and that's all I want. Okay? Because the table doesn't have a lot. Alright, so let's dampen this. Actually, I think I'm just going to take this and just kind of hit the sponge with it, because I know this paint's going to be very temperamental. Other paints you might have to work a little bit more. See, boom, that came right off there. And just by doing that, you feel like because the chalk and the mineral paints, they're always activated by water, and some that claim they have the top coats, I guess they'll set in a certain amount of time, and then this probably won't happen for you. But get to know the paints that you're working with. And if you can do this, if you're working with a latex, if you have any brush strokes, you're going to be fighting kind of a losing battle with this stage of the game. I wouldn't do, you don't really need to do it wet. You could use like a dry sand, and you would just try to sand as smooth as you can. But you're definitely going to want a top coat, because you will see a difference in your sheen when you're using the latex. That's the nice thing about using the mineral paints, the chalk style paints, the clay paints, is you get to do this sort of thing, get everything as smooth as you want. And a lot of people don't talk about this part. They just, paint it and go. But if you like that really soft, smooth finish, this is the way to do it. Every now and then, when you're working with these chalk or clay paints, or any paint really, but especially these mineral paints, it's really going to sit and gunk up into your sandpaper. That's why it's really good to use these sanding sponges, because you can dip them in the water. You can get like a little brush. I just use my rag usually, especially when we're using such a fine grit. And I go through and you can clean them out. Let me show you what I'm doing here. You can see. Okay, just take this, just make my fingers even because it's such a fine grit, and just clean out so that the grit is coming right off. Okay, and we know that the paint is coming out of the grit, what I should say. Okay. Bring it out really well, and we're going to be careful because this is pretty wet now. We won't want this to really do a bulk of our sanding, because it's just going to like peel it off. So we're going to go real light. This is a new chair. Maybe concentrate onto the edges and let this start to just dry out a little bit. I got a little aggressive with this leg here. So don't worry about if you sand too much. Oh my God, too much came off. It's okay, it's paint. Don't worry about these things, okay? Let me show you. You're just gonna go over it after. And then by the time we get to like our, last chair, that's gonna take a couple coats, that's okay. Every time I do a chair, if it's dry, I'll just add another coat, and then we just have to deal with our little fix-ups after. So, as you can see, it's the same day okay? We're wearing the same clothes, it's the same day. This is all dry, and because we didn't get it too wet. And I like, now you can use whatever you like. When you're using a chalk or mineral or clay paint, like I said, they are meant to, they're going to stay wet. They're going to stay activated by water, perhaps forever, depending on your paint brand. Some say they set, but you get to know your paint brand. I'm going with the general, it's open forever, okay? So we need to seal this. And even if, you know what, even if they say they seal, these chairs are going to take a beating, and if you're putting it with a dining table, you're going to have to seal it because they're going to take more use than your typical bureau or even an end table. You want to make sure that it's protected. Who wants to do this all over again in 5 years even? Okay, so here we go. I'm using the brand we sell. It's the Cottage Paints acrylic varnish and satin, and you can use whatever. I like to use a more sealed surface, but I don't like gloss. And I already did the table in a satin, so we're going to go with the satin. If you really want durability, the best thing you can do is go for the highest gloss. So go for the gloss. And then, but the problem is you're going to have, if you don't want the gloss after, you're going to have to tack it back down, not to get rid of that finish, but just to give it a little tack so that then you can go over with a semi-gloss or a satin or a matte even. Because even though the high gloss is the most sealed, it's not the most desirable look. And lower sheens can't go over higher sheens. The matte can't go over satin, can't go over semi-gloss or gloss. Semi-gloss shouldn't be going over high gloss. Satin shouldn't be going over semi-gloss or high gloss without tacking. Okay, you can go gloss over matte, but then again, kind of defeats the purpose because your matte surface, your first seal coat, isn't as sealed as it should be. So if you're going to do anything, do the high gloss first, tack it down, and then go down to your lower gloss, okay? But a happy medium is a satin, and I find that this really does hold up well. This is a really great quality. And if you're using wax, go ahead. All you want to do with the wax is you're going to take, let's say this is a sponge or a clean lint-free rag, and you would dip it into your wax, and you would just start rubbing it on and getting it in there, rubbing it on. Don't put it on heavy. You want to put it on very thin and just really get it into the surface. You rub it and rub it and rub it, and you add as needed, and keep going and keep going and keep going. And then you would let that set, depending on the brand. If it's all natural, it takes a little longer to dry. If you're using more like a floor wax, which is very durable, once it dries faster. So like, let's say it's something that's got some carnauba in it, it's going to dry a little bit faster. So you can let that set overnight. Well, you're going to wipe it on like this, right? Let it sit for like an hour or so, and then you wipe off the excess. Let it set overnight. And if you want a little shine to it, you can take like a lint-free cloth and sort of buff it out. You want to actually do a couple coats of the wax and then buff it out at the end if you want. But again, I don't like to use a wax, so I'm using a water-based poly. It's acrylic, and I'm just going to put it on with this brush that I just love to use. And again, we should start upside down, okay? And let's get the camera down. There we go. And we're just gonna get it underneath a little bit. Make sure we're working out the edges, because this will show a little bit as it starts to tack, because it has a sheen. Okay? Alright, so we gotta work a little bit fast. we want to finish an area before we step away to another project. Okay, so I'm started this leg. I really want to go down this whole leg because this to me is more important than this little crossbar. Okay, let's go down the whole leg, at least on the one side, really quick. Okay, let's see. Okay, down the whole leg, really easy. All the way from the top to what is the bottom, but because it's upside down, it's our top, just to make things confusing. And then working our cross section again. You got to work a little bit faster. Slip it on there and then do the length. Okay. I'm not too concerned about that portion. And I don't want to forget this portion. All right. I don't want to work that anymore. I'd rather go in more layers than overwork this part. Because you will get some pulling of the sheen. You might even be activating the chalk mineral clay paint. Kind of covering all my bases with that. And so you don't want to overwork it. Just get a thin layer on, get it sealed. Okay, you'll get a little more work time on the next coat. But this first coat, you can't overwork it. It's going to sink into your paint pretty fast. It's a very hungry paint. It's a very thirsty paint, I should say. Also make sure you're checking your edges for any of those drips. Because boy, isn't that frustrating when you get to what you think is the end of your project and then you see the drips. And yeah, you can sand them out and it's just paint. So, if you do have that happen, just try and sand it out best you can with a real fine grit. Be patient with it. Don't try to over manhandle it, and you might get lucky and just get that drip out. If you start pulling up paint around it, which is typically what happens, at least for me, don't worry about it, okay? Just do a little fix. But getting yourself upset about it isn't going to do anyone any good, and it's something that just happens. Any parts. Alright. Move our way here, and we're going to keep doing this, right? And as you see, I did the distressing as much as I was comfortable with. I told my story with the distressing. When you're doing your sanding, and if you're distressing at all, tell the story. Did this chair take a lot of abuse? Was it loved by a family? Or was it lightly used like mine? Whatever it is, it's your story. It's your chair, right? It's your set. And I just want to be able to flip this over and we can do the other spindles. Now if this was a seat, it'd be interesting too, because like we showed you with paint, you got to work fast and you have the seat at the intersection of all the back spindles and supports. And I think we got the first coat done. And all you're going to do, there's a drip. You got to constantly walk around, constantly, until it's like, and even then, it's nothing is 100%. You're going to find, even in the moments you won't see it, and then a day or two later you say, oh my goodness, where did that come from? I didn't even see it, and I was so close working on it. it happens, and you don't worry about it. If anything, you have to do a little fix. It's just paint. Okay. So we're gonna do this probably a couple times more on this particular chair. So there's 4 chairs, 3 coats each is good. And it's gonna have to cure. Let's talk about cure time. It's really important, okay? This will be dry to the touch, probably in an hour or less. And you're like, oh, we can paint it over again. Don't do that. Don't do it. Just give it. So this first coat, I will paint a coat on if I came in the morning, and then before I leave work at night, I could put on a second coat. But then that third coat's gonna have to wait till the next afternoon. It should be like overnight. Give each coat proper dry time. Depending on your humidity, if you're touching it and you're feeling it cool, if it's tacky at all, just don't paint over it. Then what you're doing is you're trying to steal in something that's still trying to dry. It doesn't make any sense. And you're gonna ask for problems, and you're gonna ask for lifting of paint and all that. So just give everything proper cure time. Read the directions on your products. And it never hurts to follow the directions on that. They know their product better than you do. And then cure. So that isn't cured, okay? Even if you get that third coat on and you let it sit overnight, it's not cured. It's still wet underneath. You don't feel it, but it's not hard like it should be. The cure rate, even on acrylic or a water base, it's gonna be weeks, several weeks. I like to say, to be safe, a month, 2 months. Really, honest. Oils, even longer. So for that time, doesn't mean you can't use them. Just, you might want to be a little extra careful. So if you're using them and you notice a little nick or something, and it's only been a month, or less, you can attest to that. You can't judge the durability if you're not giving it proper cure time. So I think that's it. So here we are, where we've painted, we've varnished, we've done all this work. We're one step closer to having finished chairs. So what I've done is I've gone to my local fabric store, and I've gotten this fabric. Now what I tend to do is I tend to check like clearance rack. Sometimes just in the regular clearance you get some nice upholstery fabric, and then I go over to the upholstery section and see what's on clearance or on sale there, because some of the fabrics can be very pricey. I was looking at one fabric roll. It didn't have a price on it, and it had said sale, 20% off, and I said, might be pretty good, but I couldn't find a price. So I asked the lady to price check it, and she said it was $66 a yard. And I said, oh wow, so what's the sale price? She said that was the sale price. So, and in this case we're using only a couple of yards, but still. And if you're gonna try and match your pillows and your curtains and all that, just be, buyer beware. Make sure you check the clearance section first. And then make sure you're checking, work your way from the low end of things and eliminate all the possibilities, and work your way to the higher end of the fabrics, at the very end, the last possibilities. So that said, I have my 2 yards of fabric. I have 4 chairs. I forgot what the measurement, I think it was like 20 inches. And usually, typically, fabrics run like 54 inches. That's across, and then it goes on the roll when it's upholstery fabric. So you could get 2 chairs out of that. I think a lot of upholstery fabrics are wider than that, so you want to check, because if you could get more out of it, God bless you. Also, if you had a pattern that you were trying to match, sometimes you have the big block patterns, you're going to want to get a lot of extra fabric. And I forget what the mathematics is on that, but there's a general rule of thumb, and if you know what it'll have on the tag what the pattern repeat is, and it's based on that. But any good fabric person in the store should be able to help you with that. If you give them how many yards you normally need, and they can help you figure out what the pattern repeat. And that'll be important because if you had a pattern, you don't want to just go willy-nilly, you want to kind of plan this out. So you want to maybe, if your idea is to center the main part of your pattern, you're going to have to make sure that you have enough fabric so that when the repeat happens, that it's on the center of your chairs. So that's very important, okay? It doesn't have to be on the center. It could be, maybe it's here, 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 here. That's fine too. It just make sure you're prepared for that. So what I'm going to do, I didn't even cut this up yet. We're doing it right here with you. Is typically the fabric is to the inside. The right side is to the inside. So here's my inside. And I want to make sure I know that. Well, I'll know that because my fold is going in. Okay. And then we're going to set the fabric down. And we don't need all of that. We'll go this side of it. This is the right side. Right now it doesn't matter, we're just cutting. I want to give myself, what we did is you can see the underneath side of this. As you can see, a lot of staples and whatnot. And I'll probably go back after and take a lot of these out if I can. That's going to bother me. Because with the thickness of the fabric, we can have some issues with the staples. Try to get all the staples out. And then when you're cutting the new fabric, and what I do to remove that is just get like the flat head of your screwdriver and just kind of dive it into the staple and just kind of yank it out, like pry it out, with a little leverage. And then sometimes the needle nose pliers are handy to get under there after and pull it out if they're in there really tight. And then, didn't need to show you the video on that. You can figure that out, right? But I do like to get all the staples out. This had 2 layers, don't forget. So what I have is a little bit of a overlap here, so we have room to pull the fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this. Kind of to shape, doesn't have to be exact. Enough to come around. And I can trim this more when I'm working with the fabric, okay? So there we go. I'm gonna cut 3 more and then we'll see you on the next clip. So we're really in the final stages here. I've already cut all my little trapezoids and I have them all stacked with their chair pads. For this part, you're going to want to have a good staple gun. This is not one that you're going to have from the office and try and staple it in. You need a power staple gun to get into that wood. You can get it at many of the big block stores. This happens to be a Stanley boss stitch. I'm sure that's backwards for you, but that's how we're rolling for this, okay? Sorry. And it does use like varying sizes. Remember, you want to have a staple that doesn't go too thick into the wood, and then we'll show that when we get closer in on the next clip. You also want to have like a screwdriver. This is what we're using to pry out the staples from the other ones. In case you decide you need to redo a staple, this is handy to have around, as well as, again, needle nose pliers. All right, that helps pulling out staples if you need to do that. And I want to move the camera in closer so you can get all the details, and I'll see you on that clip. All right, so here we go. If you've never used one of these before, this one in particular, it works. First we were a little confused, my husband and I both. We were like, oh, the staples don't work, we can't get them to go in there, it needs to have that pressure that pushes the staples forward. And lo and behold, they actually enter from the bottom and not from like when you're used to putting them on the back. So let me show you. In this case, we're using the arrow. We made sure that it worked with the boss stitch. Oops, made sure it worked with the boss stitch stapler. And these are 5/16. You're talking about, you got to make sure you don't want to get staples that are going to be so thick that they go through here, and when someone sits down, lo and behold, they're sitting on a staple. All right, I find that 5/16 is good for most of this. This is actually a borderline because this fabric is outdoor fabric and it's a little bit thicker. So we're going to be modifying things a little bit for this, just because it's. I would have maybe tried the next size up, but they're holding, and so that's all we need to concern ourselves about. All right, it's also going to get screwed down, and it's got so many staples in it, it'll be fine. Again, I don't want to go too thick because no one wants to sit on a staple. And so I've kind of got it centered, and again, remember, if you had a pattern, you'd want to make sure you had it aligned right, and that we have the fabric so that the right side is now out, okay? Not facing this side. We want it on the opposite side. Okay. Although this fabric, I really couldn't tell you the difference if I didn't know how I cut them to begin with, because it really looks the same on both sides. All right, so I'm going to start stapling. Oh, we're going to show you the staples. Okay, you get the package, you pull out, a line of them. And in this case, I'm setting them down into this channel and then pushing it locked. All right? Easy peasy. Now, to start this off, I'm going to start on one center, meaning the front center, the back center, or one of the sides center. And it's kind of a repetitive process, but it just works the best this way, I find. Let's see, I want to make sure we're kind of even. Yep, looks pretty even. I don't like having a lot of excess fabric. I don't like to see a lot of that on the other side of the chair if anyone was to ever move and you see the undersides of the chair. So that's it. You just give it enough of a press, squeeze I should say, with the stapler so that this releases the staple into there. Now we're going to go to the opposite side. This is not a process that our shop dog likes. For some reason this sound bothers him. All right, and again, we're on Main Street, so you're going to hear a motorcycle. Hopefully it doesn't get too loud. All right, so we're pulling. I forgot to mention we're pulling and we're pulling. Pull. Give it a good tug. And I'm actually giving a little forward pressure with the stapler. All right. Again, give it a good tug. Especially on the opposite side, you can really give it a good pull. And if you're, depending on your fabric, this is a very durable, heavy-duty fabric, so I'm not going to be distorting it. You might have to compromise how much you're tugging if your fabric's on the lighter side, and you don't want it to be kind of warped by the pulling. You just need it taut enough so that it doesn't loosen after people start sitting on it. All right. So now we can start filling in. Again, this center and this center, these centers. All right, I'm going to keep moving. Pulling, and I'm pushing forward with this as I'm stapling. Okay, now we're going to give it a good Girl Scout tug. I might even pull some fabric with my fingers like that. find my fingers get a little tired after a while. But there we go. And now this center, from center, well, this quarter, let's say this quarter. Pushing forward with the staplers as well. We're just trying to do this as evenly as possible. I'm lucky in this particular fabric. I don't have to worry about a lot of distortion going on. And if someday down the road, since we're doing more videos, I'm doing chairs where there's more of a pattern. I'll jump on and do a quick video to show you some of the parts that you have to be concerned about when you have more of a pattern to worry about. But this is pretty easy peasy. So here I've already cut the corners and at an angle. And this one I'm gonna do, because they're in the front, I wanna make sure we had good coverage. So like right here. Just cutting that triangle off. All right, now, there are different ways you can do this. However, in playing with this, I like to try to take and like pleat it if possible. But what's happening with this fabric is this is getting so thick that it's going to lift up from the chair base too much, and it won't be pretty. So what I've been finding that works for this thicker fabric is I start with the corner, the flat edge there, and I want to keep my staples thin here, so I'm going to go kind of vertical to this instead of across like I did with the others. There we go. Now my hand wants to work. And then I'm just gonna, I think I was doing this way. I'm gonna tuck this as much as I can and get it as flat. See, like kind of like doing the bed. Okay, tuck this down, and then pull and pull and pull. Pull this as taut as you can. Okay, and this one I'll go this way. Okay, and this one I'm just kind of using this fold to give me the nicest, flattest curve on there. And I'm going to trim this a little more here. And I might just kind of flare it, because we can trim this anyways. Okay. Pulling as tight as I can. Once again, I'm going to staple this down. I'm going to pull this other end as well. And then when you look at it from the other side, we have a tiny little tuck, but when you're looking at the seat, it's got a nice round, even corner. All right. Let's keep doing this. Bring this up some more. Bring it to its quarter. And just keep filling in with staples at this point. Okay. Pull. Always pulling. Always, always, always pulling the fabric. Always pushing in with the stapler. And you know if you're not pulling evenly if you're seeing a wave on this edge. So let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. See here, because this isn't stapled down between here and here, you get like a little wave. It's very fine, but sometimes if your cushioning is thicker or whatever, it can happen that way on a smaller scale. So if you flip over your chair and you're seeing those little ripples on the side, all you have to do is kind of just pull the staples out and just go back and pull that fabric. You want to keep everything as tight as you first pulled it. Let's put it that way. Keep everything as even as possible. All right. Let's do another corner. Pull. Keep this staple thin so it's going vertical or perpendicular. All right. Now we're going to pick a side to tuck. And let's see, I don't like how this is. There, that's better. Just keep playing with it till it gets nice and flat. How long does this take? It doesn't. I mean, you're watching me do this. My husband and I have taken apart the chairs together, you know, with a glass of our favorite beverage, and, you know, just kind of took apart fabric on a set of chairs. Probably like, and I want to say it was 6 chairs that we did it to in one evening. And I think the next evening we sat around together and did, I don't know, see now here's like a little tuck, it's not pulling even, so I'm going to pull this staple out, see, alright, pull the staple, and there we go. I have some garbage over there, and so we have a nice straight edge. All right. Let's do this corner. Nice and taut. But if you were in a real bind and you really wanted to redo chairs in a day, you could do it. Maybe not be so particular and get all the staples out. Just get, you know, what you can out. Cut the fabric and start stapling. It's not very hard. If you haven't used your hands a lot, your fingers might be sore the next day. But, all right. And then, you know, after the corners, you just start filling in the rest of the way like I showed you in that other spot until pretty much all the staples are in. Again, take the ones out if you're getting a little buckling. All right. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll finish it up by showing you how we screw them back into their bases and show you what a finished chair looks like. All right, we're in the final stages of this whole process, and I'll tell you, it wasn't as smooth as I'd like. I'm just being honest with you. So the first chair we tried screwing to the bottom of our mean the seat pad that we tried, you know, screwing into the bottom, like we have this one, we have one in. The problem is this one was off center. It wasn't even from this side to this side, or the front, the back kind of thing. And so I needed to move it over just a hair. So the problem is now the screws were close to going into the holes, but not quite going into the holes. So the only thing I could do is I actually tried, when I moved it to the right center, you know, the proper center, we had new holes start, and it worked for 3 of the holes, but I just couldn't get it to work for the 4th. So I unstapled this. I took, like, this is just, what is it? A Q-tip, a long Q-tip we use, and it was a lot longer, and I've cut little bits of it off at a time, and with a little bit of wood glue. All right, this we use Gorilla wood glue. I just put some glue in the holes, and I chipped off, you know, real small amounts of this. I just took a pair of scissors. I took about, you know, that much. Okay, very little, just enough to go in this, you know, maybe 1/4 inch if that, plywood. And it took about 3 of these, you know, small pieces in the holes each. And it was a little difficult, but I had to take a nice little fine tip nose pliers and kind of get them into the holes back here, because I didn't want to undo these. I had these little fine tip. All right, and I just kind of took the little bit and I kind of put it into the hole this way. I don't want to undo these corners. There's just no sense in doing that. So I'll let this dry, and we'll be able to do this one tomorrow, and hopefully we don't have any more like that. But normally, if everything was centered, we could just reinsert the screws. So this one, I marked them all. This one is number 2. I have a number 2 here, and this was an Allen. And it also tells me it's Allen because it has these little pocket screw holes here. So, in the normal scheme of things, this is how it would, this is normally how it goes. You just put it in. All right. Make sure we're, give this a little more tension this way, I think. Oop-a-daisy. In, and we got another one here. All right. Oh no, that was the wrong one. I knew that. It wants to go in that end. It wasn't supposed to be an Allen head. We'll let that one fall out after. All right, so I'm putting it into this side hole, which is what I didn't do the first time. So I tried to put it into this hole instead of the one on the side that they had, whoever did this, jerry-rigged before. Okay. And it's looking pretty even. Let's get that screw out. There it is. And we're just going to put the other ones in. Let's see, that one's in. And let's try, not sure which one was used. Let's try this one. You want to put a little pressure as you're using the powered screwdriver. And you want to just kind of feel it out. You don't want it to just go, you know, it'll strip the head. Okay, that's good. If I want it tighter, I can get an Allen head wrench. They sell kits at the stores, and you can just fit the right size one in there and turn it by hand. All right. This one can go tighter. Let's see. And this one can go tighter. So now that's on. All right, I'm going to continue, and hopefully we don't have any more problems. And again, I wanted to kind of cover over what we did. I need to create a brand new kind of a surface. And I could have flipped the wood over. I could have taken all the fabric off, flipped the wood over. But the problem is most likely, since these were kind of big fat screws, my guess is that the holes are still somewhat in the same place. And I'm risking going into the same holes anyways. So I just took that, those little pieces of wood, put them in there, kind of hammered them down nice and smooth, so it gives me a fresh palette. So next time all I have to do is maybe pre-drill and put the screws in where it is center, and I don't have to worry about the holes, okay? I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comments down below, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing here, and if I come across anything I think you need to see or talk about, we'll go do another clip. If not, we'll just finish it off. So that's it. We've gotten through the whole process. We've prepped, we've cleaned, we painted, we sealed, we reupholstered. We did it all, and we did it together, and I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you'll tackle your own chairs, or maybe you're just watching to see why someone charges money, you know, the money they do for reupholstering and painting chairs. So again, I hope it was helpful, and I'll just show you. We have a complete chair, right? Complete with all the little bit of distress. All right, it looks super sweet around the table. And that's it. If you have any questions, again, put it down below and I'll get to it. Any comments, you can also reach us through any of our social sites. It's Seaporium at the end of any of the social sites. So Facebook/Seaporium, Instagram/Seaporium. It's pretty easy peasy. We're also on Twitter and TikTok now. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you learned something, and if you did, please share with all your friends and spread the love. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.